nowadays. Followers offer monks and nuns houses and whatever good things they can afford. Then they live such comfortable lives that they no longer want to go to the Pure Land. The present life becomes so satisfactory that the goal to transcend the cycle of birth and death to attain Buddhahood fades. This is very harmful to their cultivation. They have left their secular home behind. To present them with a house is to urge them to return home. Isn't this harmful to them? Having received ownership of a house, they have again acquired property. This is regression of their cultivation. The follower is then actually a criminal who will ruin the master. These people do not understand that this is harming Buddhism and damaging the spirit of the Triple Jewels. They think they are doing a good deed and accumulating much merit. When they see the king of the hell realms after they die, they will feel bewilderment at their punishment. We must have true wisdom to cultivate good fortune, merits, and virtues in Buddhism. Followers need to be told this, but many masters are reluctant to tell them because then they may not receive offerings. What about me? I am determined to go to the Pure Land. I will not remain in this world to continue suffering. Thus, to tell the truth, I do not care whether you make offerings to me or not. It would be even better for me if you did not, for it would save me a lot of trouble. Because of this, I started the corporate body of the Buddha's Educational Foundation, which is dedicated to the printing and distribution of Buddhist books. I told the manager, print more if there are more offerings, print less if there are less offerings. There is no need to print any if there are no offerings, which is best. When too many offerings are received, we have to take the trouble to select among all the Buddhist books to determine which ones are most suitable to print and then decide how best to print them. With no offerings, there would be no worries, no troubles. So we should not seek offerings, seek a way place, or ask for anything. Then we will have a pure mind and quiet heart on our path to enlightenment. Cultivating a pure mind and a quiet heart is helping others to cultivate the same, and staying away from fame and profit is true cultivation. We need to foster novice monks and nuns by placing them in hardships. if we cannot bear to see them suffering hardships, we are harming them. When Buddha Shakyamuni was in this world, all of his students had only one meal a day and spent the night sitting under trees. Is this not a life of hardship? If we had been there and felt sorry for them and helped them out of their hardships, how then could they have attained enlightenment? The Buddha taught us to regard hardship as our teacher. Only by living most simply and frugally can we acquire a true Dharma heart and be firmly determined to transcend this world. So hardships are good for us. If we are not willing to undergo hardships ourselves, then we can at least respect those who are and try not to extricate them from their difficulties. Only when we sincerely help inexperienced monks and nuns to improve will we have good masters promoting Buddhism. The seventh vow is to request the Buddha to reside in this world. The main purpose of the sixth vow is to introduce Buddhism to all people. If we hope to have accomplishment in our cultivation, the vow to request the turning of the Dharma wheel is not enough. Have you ever seen anyone attain enlightenment by listening to a talk on the sutra only once or twice in his or her lifetime? If this could happen, then enlightenment would only be attainable when Buddha was in this world, and not attainable when he was not. However, with our limited abilities, we cannot do this. So we need to request the Buddha to remain, to reside in this world. In other words, we need a teacher who is with us every day, so that we can be under their constant guidance and thus be able to reach enlightenment. Years ago, I was asked by Professor Lee about my aspirations. I told him that I wished to travel around the world, encouraging others to practice Buddhism. He nodded and told me that this was good, that I could achieve, but I could not help others to do so. I asked, why? He replied that I could only propagandize. He said that he had lived in Taichung for more than 30 years, and therefore many people had attained achievement. He went on to explain that if he had not lived in Taichung, but had visited there once or twice a year, then nobody would have had any achievement. To be able to help another, there needs to be an existing affinity. Without this affinity, even a Buddha cannot help us. By traveling around the world propagating Buddhism, we will meet many people, but the affinities with them are lighter. Staying in one place to conduct regular teachings needs stronger affinities. I have benefited greatly from my travels, as I have been freed from the concept of a home. Every day I was either on the road or in a hotel. Where is my home? No home at all. Although I have places to give talks, I usually do not stay there for longer than a few weeks. The shattering of the idea of home has proven to be an escape for me. If we want to reach any achievement, we need to request the Buddha to remain in this world. The Buddha himself is no longer here, but his followers are, be they monks and nuns or lay people. Those who are knowledgeable and virtuous can be invited to reside in our town or city to give teachings. In this way, we will constantly be under their guidance. It is easy to provide for masters of virtue and character because they lead simple lives. However, the lecture hall should look magnificent so that the listeners will like it and thus will develop respect for the way place. However, if the appearance of the hall is mediocre, they might look down on the way place. People often set store by appearance and pay less attention to content. Although a person who knows the true value of things does not attach much importance to appearance, a splendid and imposing looking lecture hall is necessary for people to see initially. Although the lecture and cultivation halls are impressive, the living quarters of the monks and nuns are very simple. If we look at the temples in China, we will understand. Even the head monk or nun lives in a small room. The luxurious exterior rooms are only for lay people and visitors. By carefully observing this, we will know the right manner to have and the right methods we need to adopt. Doing so properly will enable Buddhism to take root, grow, blossom, and bear fruit wherever we live. From the above, we can see that the 10 great vows of Bodhisattva, of the first 7, are the vows for bodhisattvas and vow and conduct. The last 3 of these vows are the ways to dedicate all merits. The 8th vow is to constantly be a diligent follower of the Buddha's teachings. Although the Buddha no longer resides in this world, we still have his sutras to study, to follow. Following the sutras is the highest standard in our learning and practicing Buddhism. The ninth vow is to accord with all sentient beings. We need to accord with the wishes of all sentient beings in the universe. This is extremely difficult to do, and is why the Chinese say that filial piety and according with others go together. Learning Buddhism is to honor filial piety and to accord with the being's wishes. While according, we need to look for the right opportunities to encourage people to stop committing wrongdoings. This will help them to break through delusion and attain enlightenment. However, to do this perfectly, we need to recognize the right way and time, and for this we need wisdom, expediency, and flexibility. The 10th vow is to dedicate all merits. This means dedicating all of our good deeds and merits to all the sentient beings in the universe. It means broadening our hearts so that the entire universe becomes one entity. Only when we have reached this state can we be said to have attained the great perfection. In our learning and cultivation of the Pure Land, we use 5 sutras and 1 sastra or commentary. The Buddha speaks of the Infinite Life Sutra of adornment, purity, equality, and awakening of the Mahayana school, the Amitabha Sutra, the Visualization Sutra, the chapter of Universal Worthies, Conduct and Vows from the Flower Adornment Sutra, the chapter on the perfect, complete realization of great strength bodhisattvas through Buddha name recitation from the Surangama Sutra, and Vasubandhu Bodhisattva's report on the way of reaching the Pure Land. We practice the 5 guidelines of the 3 conditions, the 6 harmonies, the 3 learnings, the 6 paramitas, and the 10 great vows of universal worthy bodhisattva. Very simple, very clear, not at all complicated. If we consistently follow these, our learning and cultivation, then we are sure to succeed. In doing so, as an ancient sage said, if 10,000 practice, 10,000 will succeed. Now, we have the principles and methods of learning and cultivation. How do we interact with people, matters, and objects in our daily lives. If we follow the above guidelines, single-mindedly chant the name of Buddha Amitabha, and seek birth into the Pure Land, we will definitely succeed. We have looked at the basis for learning and cultivation and have had a brief introduction to the main practice guidelines. Now, let's look at the creative teaching methods of Buddhism. As Master Ching Liang explained in the Flower Adornment Sutra, learning and cultivation can be divided into the 4 stages of belief, understanding, practice, and realization. The first stage is belief. When we are able to believe, then our conditions have matured. There is a saying, the Buddha is unable to help those who have no affinity with him. What is affinity? It is being able to believe. Even a Buddha cannot help someone whose conditions have not yet matured. However, when they have matured, the person will believe. Then the Buddha can help. Religions are different from Buddhism in that once the believers have faith, they are saved. Whereas in Buddhism, belief in Buddhism means that we believe in the benefits of Buddhism and accept one of the many methods. Once we have belief, we have to have understanding. Buddhism explains the truth of life and the universe. Only after we have acquired a true understanding of it can we begin our practice. Therefore, practice is based on understanding. If we do not understand the principles and methods, how can we practice? True practice is based on the foundation of principles and correct methods. The ultimate goal of practice is to attain achievement, to attain the real benefit. What is achievement? It is the application of what we believe, understand, and practice in our daily lives to attain the ultimate enjoyment in life. For example, what we find in the Infinite Life Sutra is just what we think and practice. What we think and practice in our daily lives conforms with the sutra. This is attainment and true reality. And this is what makes Buddhism so valuable. Thus, we need to understand the proper sequence of cultivation, which is belief, understanding, practice, and attainment. When we speak of belief, first we believe in ourselves. This is where Buddhism differs from religion. In religion, the most important criteria is to believe in God. In Buddhism, the most important criteria is to believe in ourselves, not in something outside of ourselves. We need to believe that we have the same Buddha nature. Believe that originally we were Buddhas. Believe that we are no different from Buddhas. Believe that our true nature has become polluted, and that once we remove this pollution, we will uncover our true self nature. However, if we are always dwelling on thoughts that we have heavy karmic obstacles and fear that this will keep us from achieving attainment, then we will definitely not achieve. Why? If we do not believe we can achieve, then even the Buddha and Bodhisattvas cannot help us. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas can only help those who help themselves. Therefore, it is crucial that we have this confidence and belief in ourselves. In addition, we also need to believe in the teachings of the Buddha. We have been told infinite principles and methods. We will surely succeed as long as we follow them. After we have belief in ourselves, we need to have belief in the Buddha's teachings. Master O.E. described this as believing in principles and in matter. Where does matter come from? From the principle that is the pure mind of the true nature. All phenomena in the universe arise from this principle. They are related by the endless cycle of birth and death. A cause gives rise to an effect, which in turn becomes the cause of the next effect. This process continues ceaselessly. Developing understanding and belief in true reality builds our confidence, enabling us to seek thorough understanding of everything. Only in this way can we be free of confusion and doubt, which are obstacles in our cultivation, and thus we can obtain enjoyment and smooth advancement. In practicing Buddhism, it is most important to accept the teacher's instructions and practice according to the recommended methods. This has been the right way to learn since ancient times. The first requirement was to follow the 5-year restriction which was set by the teacher. In so doing, the teacher took full responsibility for whether the student succeeded or failed. This is the principle of honoring teachers and revering their teachings. This principle, however, no longer holds today, for teachers are not responsible and students are not earnest. The principles of teaching are declining, and this is the tragedy of our times. Students no longer respect teachers, and teachers no longer sincerely want to help students achieve. The 5-year learning restriction resulted in the student following just one teacher. It laid the foundation for the 3 learnings of self-discipline, deep concentration, and wisdom. It was the responsibility of the teacher to see that the student learned this. Consider Zen Buddhism. What did the teacher ask of the student for the first 5 years? They were assigned simple manual labor and asked to perform it earnestly, without change, every day. They were also to memorize the sutra. They were to read after completing their work and not to be concerned with anything else. The purpose of this labor was not to treat them as servants. After a while, the student felt bored and would think that he or she had worked very hard for 5 years without accomplishing anything. In actuality, he or she had accomplished much without realizing it. What was acquired? Afflictions were greatly reduced, and concentration was increased because of a ban against seeing and listening to many things. If the ban was properly followed, the students attained both good fortune and wisdom. What is good fortune? Working every day in the way place was cultivating the practice of giving. Since monks and nuns had no money to give away, they could work to practice the paramita of giving. Through the restrictions on listening and reading, they thereby concentrated the 6 sense organs, and the students also acquired a pure mind and attained deep concentration. This is wisdom. So the teacher taught the students to cultivate good fortune and establish the foundation of self-discipline, deep concentration, and wisdom. The teaching was designed to be subtle yet effective. With the 5-year learning restriction as a base, upon listening to 1 or 2 Dharma talks, the students could become enlightened. In the biographies of well-accomplished monks, we see that through this method, many monks became enlightened in 3 to 5 years. Today, however, practitioners can live in a way place for 30 or 50 years, even a lifetime, without awakening. They may have read numerous sutras, but remained unenlightened. At most, they have memorized some general knowledge about Buddhism, but nothing to sever their afflictions or attain wisdom. So we must try to find a good teacher for guidance. This advice may seem boring at first, but after the initial stage, we will be truly delighted and joyful in our attainment. Many of us have made the big mistake at the beginning of our cultivation of wanting to learn all different methods. Ancient learned monks and nuns started with the second of the great vows of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Afflictions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them all. In ending all afflictions, we will achieve deep concentration and attain wisdom. Then the ways to practice are boundless. I vow to learn them all. This is the correct way for cultivation. The mistake many people make is to attempt to study extensively without having severed afflictions. Master Qingliang called this understanding with no practice. These people concentrate only on understanding while neglecting the practice. They do not try to end their afflictions, to cultivate a pure mind. As a result, they develop deviated viewpoints rather than proper views and viewpoints. What is the first step in learning Buddhism? Start by reciting one sutra. Do we need to understand it? No. For when we have not ended our afflictions, our understanding will be erroneous. Then why do we recite only one sutra? By reciting the sutra, the 3 learnings of self-discipline, deep concentration, and wisdom are accomplished together. Self-discipline requires that we do nothing bad, do all that is good. Reciting a sutra can prevent us from generating wandering thoughts, so we will be prevented from doing all that is bad. Sutras are words that flow from the Buddha, from his true nature. Nothing can surpass these words in virtue. Therefore, reciting a sutra is doing all that is good and results in the perfection of self-discipline, so there is no need to practice the precepts one by one. When reciting a sutra, we must focus. By focusing, we cultivate concentration, clearly enunciating every word correctly, without any omission, is the practice of wisdom. Therefore, reciting the sutra properly is to practice the three learnings at the same time. Any attempt to analyze the sutra while reciting is in fact treating the sutra as a worldly book. This will result in none of the three learnings being accomplished, and is not true cultivation. Never belittle the practice of sutra recitation, as it is the base of cultivation. Reciting for 1 hour accomplishes 1 hour of cultivation. Reciting for 2 hours accomplishes 2 hours of cultivation, etc. Needless to say, the longer, the better. Many of my fellow practitioners in Taiwan and Dallas are reciting the Infinite Life Sutra 10 times a day. So far, some may have chanted the sutra over 2,000 times. Thus, they are very familiar with the text and only need 30 to 45 minutes to finish one sutra. Reciting 10 times thus means 5 or 6 hours of practicing self-discipline, deep concentration, and wisdom. With so many hours devoted to cultivation, we will naturally develop a serene mind in just a few years' time. Sutras flow from the pure and quiet mind and heart of the Buddha. When we have developed a mind as pure, as quiet, we will understand all we read in the sutra. The reason why the sutra is so hard to understand now is that our minds are filled with wandering thoughts. How can this mind be in harmony with one that is pure and quiet? This is why we do not understand the Buddha's words. So if we want to learn from a good teacher, we need to trust and believe that their methods are proper and correct. Just choose one sutra without being distracted by others. If we choose to follow the Pure Land School, we recite and study the Infinite Life Sutra. If we choose to follow the Tiantai School, we recite and study the Lotus Sutra. If we choose to follow the Flower Adornment Sutra, we recite and study the Flower Adornment Sutra. When choosing a school, follow its principles and delve deeply into the sutra for 5 years. In other words, sever all afflictions and try to develop a pure and quiet heart. This is the first step in learning Buddhism. Frankly, 5 years of learning and cultivating were enough for a practitioner to gain a pure mind in the past, because their minds were not as polluted as ours now are. In the past, children would remain innocent until around 10 years of age. Then they would begin to be aware of differences between right and wrong, self and others. They would begin to develop such characteristics as greed, anger, ignorance, and arrogance. Look at today's children. They start showing greed, anger, ignorance, and arrogance when they are only a few years old. Where do they learn these things? From television. They are exposed to television every day. They naturally become polluted. They do not have the happy, innocent childhood their parents had. How unfortunate they are. I was born and grew up in the countryside and was neither knowing nor sensible and aware of the world until I was 13. True happiness is to remain innocent as long as possible in childhood and to not be aware of any of the suffering in the world. All I knew was how to play. Once we lose our childhood innocence, we are no longer happy. For then, we have to be constantly aware of others. So I say that modern people are less fortunate than their predecessors were. Once we have developed a pure and quiet mind and have attained wisdom, then we can begin to broaden our knowledge. So we can see, hear, learn of anything that we are interested in. For now, we have attained wisdom and will not be affected by our surroundings. Since we have self-control, the more we see and hear, the wiser we will become, and the greater our strength from deep concentration will be. How are deep concentration and wisdom increased? Remaining unmoved by our surroundings will enhance deep concentration. Developing a clear and understanding mind will enhance wisdom. Then we can learn from other schools to further enhance our deep concentration and wisdom. First, we practice self-discipline, deep concentration, and wisdom to attain our original wisdom. Then we can learn extensively to perfect our acquired wisdom. This is the way of learning from ancient times. The Buddha told us in the great Prajna Sutra, innocent, intuitive wisdom knows all. So we must cultivate innocence first. The 5-year method of practicing self-discipline results in our remaining innocent of the happenings in the world. When we are once again in contact with the world, we will be aware of knowing all. This is the proper sequence and method to learn and practice Buddhism. Ancient patriarchs not only abided by the rules set by Buddha Shakyamuni, but also took Confucianism as the basis for their learning and practicing. Chinese Buddhism has abandoned Theravada Buddhism in place of Confucius teachings. Chinese Buddhists, as the basis for learning Buddhism, adopted the 5 virtues of Confucius of gentleness, kindness, respectfulness, thriftiness, and humility. From this foundation, they developed the 3 conditions, the 6 principles of harmony, the 3 learnings, the 6 paramitas, and the 10 great vows of universal, worthy bodhisattva. All the schools of Mahayana Buddhism adopted this framework of learning and teaching. In other words, we can accomplish our learning and cultivation in any school as long as we follow these principles and methods. So we can say that taking the 5 virtues and 6 harmonies is the basis and a unique characteristic of Chinese Buddhism. There was another advanced method of teaching and learning in Buddhism: continuing education for teachers. It was not until recently that this method again came into use. When he was in this world, Buddha Shakyamuni had many students. Some stayed with him because they had not yet finished their study, and thus had not yet become independent. But others had reached some level of achievement. The latter were bodhisattvas who were responsible for spreading Buddhism. They went to different locations, set up way places, and taught on behalf of the Buddha. Then they would return to where the Buddha was for 3 months for a summer retreat, for continuing education. This is similar to today's summer vacation, when the students are out of school, but the teachers cannot rest, for they need to receive further training. So the bodhisattvas went back to be with the Buddha for a summer retreat. They listened to his teaching, and thus were able to increase their concentration, wisdom, and virtues. They also discussed difficulties they had encountered in their teaching and tried to find solutions. They learned from each other in seeking self-improvement. This system of continuing education has been infrequently seen in Chinese history. It is advisable that way places and Buddhist societies conduct summer and winter retreats of Buddha name recitation and Zen meditation, seminars, etc., for short-term training. This is very effective And people are able to accept this idea of short-term continuing education. If we directly tell them that it is for severing afflictions, cultivating self-discipline, concentration, and wisdom, and transcending the cycle of birth and death, only a few people can accept this concept or will be interested. Amitofo.